Anytime we got an action scene in this movie, you can say it was full of spectacle. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another installment in my now overdue Daniel Craig James Bond review series, where, prior to my review of No Time to Die, I'm discussing the rest of Daniel Craig's run as James Bond, and today we're discussing his fourth film, Spectre. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were if you already saw it, or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it, and let's talk about Spectre. This sees Bond discovering a cryptic message from his past, which sends him on a trail to uncover the existence of a sinister organization named Spectre. With a new threat dawning, Bond learns the terrible truth about the author of all of his pain in his most recent missions. So, as I do with some of my reviews of older films, I am going to get into some spoiler territory for this movie. So, if you haven't seen Spectre by now and you wish to know absolutely nothing, this is your spoiler warning. Go watch the movie, then come back to this. But anyway, here we go. Sam Mendes returns to the director's chair after Skyfall, and it sees something of a return to James Bond's roots. Not that the previous films didn't include any of the classic Bond elements or anything, but tonally, this marks a bit of a departure from what we've got in any of the other Craig movies. The past three films, to varying degrees, are noted for their darker, more somber takes on Bond. Not to the point of overly depressing, as we still got some quips thrown in there and moments that made us chuckle, but they were considerably more serious than a lot of the other Bond movies up until that point. Now, while this doesn't go into full-on campy territory, as say the Roger Moore movies, this doubles down on a lot of the things present in the older Bond films. There are a lot more quips, the action scenes feel considerably more over the top. With the introduction of Q in the last movie, there are even more gadgets here, and you even have Dave Bautista as a guy named Mr. Hinks, who's that hulking henchman figure in the vein of classic villains like Jaws or Oddjob. Now, while these films have been trying in the past to put a little bit of distance between themselves and some of the older films, I'd say that this isn't the case with this. It feels like something in the vein of a Sean Connery movie. While Skyfall fell on the 50th anniversary of Bond, and I know they were trying to find ways to pay tribute to the character's legacy, that still feels like its own thing, even with its introduction of classic Bond elements. While this feels like it actually steered closer in the direction I think they were initially looking to go in Skyfall. And depending on how you like your big blockbusters, this is either going to be for better or for worse for you. I know there's a considerable following among superhero fans, Bond fans, or whatever other major franchise it is that prefers the darker, grittier stuff. I'm not saying the majority of fans, but there's definitely a divide between those who want something more lighthearted and something more somber. And for those who like the direction taken in Casino Royale and Skyfall, and I guess to a lesser extent Quantum of Solace, I can see them being a bit disappointed with this movie. Now, I'm someone who prefers a balance, and honestly, I always have a bias towards films that are meant to be fun. I want emotion and I want stakes, don't get me wrong. I do want to feel like I'm going through a journey with these characters, but if you do a good enough job of making me smile during the film, I'm not really going to complain about it all that much. And that was the case here. I thought Spectre was fun. It's not quite on the same level as Casino Royale or Skyfall, but I think it's an enjoyable film overall. Sure, it can be a little goofy and it essentially runs with the same Bond formula, but it was entertaining enough that I'd have no problem revisiting it. For one thing, it's another gorgeously shot Bond film. As I said in my review of Skyfall, Sam Mendes is really phenomenal at staging action, and while the action sequences here aren't quite on Skyfall's level, they are fun for what they are. In particular, the opening scene at the Day of the Dead in Mexico City, as well as a fight on a train between Bond and Mr. Hinks. These moments are stylish like some of the other Bond movies, while the camera work was just top-notch as it was in Skyfall. And since the film's going for a slightly lighter tone than the other Bond films, it's got a little bit of a brighter color palette, and it works out nicely here, as a lot of the shots in this film just pop. They look absolutely phenomenal. Even if you're underwhelmed by the film's tone, it's still just wonderful to look at. And Daniel Craig, as always, does a solid job as Bond again here. Now, this isn't quite as emotional of a journey for him this time around, but considering he gets to lean more into Bond's charming side, he gets in even more quips than usual. He lights up the screen every time we see him, and it all works. Even though he's been praised in these other films for tapping into Bond's more emotional side, he's also fun playing up the classic Bond feel. And the rest of the supporting cast returning from the previous films are all also very enjoyable, including Ben Whishaw as Q, Naomi Harris as Moneypenny, Ray Fiennes as the new M, Rory Kinnear as the Chief of Staff. And now that we got through introductions for most of them in the previous film, this allowed them to properly explore the team's dynamics as a functioning unit, and these moments would be a lot of fun. Though Bond's mainly joined here by Léa Seydoux as Madeleine Swann, who's the daughter of Mr. White from Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. Now, I know she's been in a number of noteworthy things before, usually in small parts, but this was the first time I saw her in a major role, and I gotta say, she was really good here. After Vesper Lynd, she's probably the best Bond girl in this run of films, as well as just in general. Seydoux and Craig have really solid chemistry with one another, and she gets to take part in the action in a number of sequences herself. And she was really strong in those moments. She and Bond are side by side for a lot of the film, and she gets to shine just as much as he does in several of these sequences, especially one where they're confronted by the big villain in the later part of the film. And that villain would be Christoph Waltz playing a man named Franz Oberhauser, who was later revealed to be the classic Bond villain Blofeld. Now, while I like this film as a whole, when it comes to this character, it's unfortunate for me to say that this was probably where I was at my most mixed with it. Now, I will preface this with the fact that Christoph Waltz is an incredible actor. I've yet to see him turn in a bad performance, and for such a classic Bond villain, honestly, there was no one better to take on the role than him. He can be absolutely charming as a protagonist, and he can then take that same charm and subvert it to something much more sinister as a villain. And if you need proof of that, go watch his performances in both Django Unchained and Inglourious Basterds, both of which he won Oscars for. Now, as for his performance here, it's great. Don't get me wrong about that. My issue comes with the way certain aspects of his backstory are revealed, as this is supposed to tie into a personal journey for Bond. Because it's revealed that Blofeld is behind the events of all three of the past Bond films. Le Chiffre, Dominic Green, and Raul Silva are all part of the same organization as he is, which is Spectre, and he orchestrated the events of all three of those films, in particular the deaths of Vesper Lynd and the previous M. We're supposed to get this feel that there's this giant secret plot that's been going on, and it's of epic proportions. We're meant to feel that this is even grander in scale than these other Bond films. However, I never truly quite felt that. Not that I didn't feel the stakes of this at all, but I think the problem is, you have Blofeld, who's supposed to be the mastermind of not just this movie's events, but the previous three, and it's established early on he's our main villain, yet we actually don't see him all too often in the movie. Not until the later part, at least. Now, I get you want to build up a little bit of the suspense to the villain, but honestly, it felt like the film didn't do a great job at building him up. For the first half of the film, the conflict is centered more around Dave Bautista chasing Bond around, and not that I had an issue with these sequences, because Bautista was great here, but I felt we really didn't circle back enough to Blofeld prior to his big scene with Bond later on in the film where all is revealed. He isn't seen or mentioned enough that he felt like a looming presence, at least for me. And what didn't help either is that once again, you can kind of feel the runtime of this. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think James Bond movies need to be 2.5 hours long. I get they're meant to be these big event films, and there have been instances where they're able to pull off the lengthy runtime like Casino Royale, but this feels a bit overstuffed at times in my view. This could have benefited from a tighter script, because it's a lot before we get into some of these big reveals like with Blofeld. The first part of this film drags things out a bit too much before we get into the more important stuff later on. Now, like I said, the action's solid here, but I did feel that 2.5 hour runtime with this film more than I did with almost any other Bond movie. Then there's another reveal that Bond and Blofeld were adopted brothers, and it's part of a personal grudge Blofeld had against Bond as a child that led him to mercilessly going after him in these other movies. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this was silly. Mainly because this was literally the reveal of Austin Powers in Goldmember, which itself is a parody of the Bond movies. Austin Powers is a parody of Bond. Dr. Evil is a parody of Blofeld. And in Goldmember, it's comically revealed they're brothers. But here, the parody comes true. As much as I commend Christoph Waltz's commitment during this reveal, I almost burst out laughing when I heard this. Like, when you think of the phrase beyond parody, this is it right here. Like I said, I liked Waltz's casting as this classic character, and I wouldn't say they butchered him, but this plot twist was just too silly for me. I didn't flat out hate it, but I was really mixed on it. And as for the Bond song, Writing on the Wall by Sam Smith, it's fine. It's honestly not one of my favorite Bond songs or anything, but I don't dislike it. I know some people apparently hated it, to the point that Shirley Bassey's name was trending on Twitter at the time as she sung a number of classic Bond songs, but I liked it. It's not quite as catchy as, say, Skyfall, but Smith's vocals were great here, and the chorus does have a nice hook to it. So while it's not up there as one of the best, I think it's a little better than people give it credit for. Spectre isn't one of the best Bond films out there, but it's solid for what it is. While the return to the Bond formula of the pre-Craig films might not work for everyone, I did find it to be fun for what it was, with the action being solid and the use of humor being welcome. Where the film doesn't quite work as well for me is its script, as I found it to not feel as grand in scale as it tried to be. Plus, the reveal of the villain's relationship to Bond comes off as a bit ridiculous to me. However, it's still a solid film overall. It might not be one of the best Bond films out there, but it makes for an entertaining watch. Spectre gets a 7.5 out of 10. So with that, stay tuned for my review of No Time to Die on the way shortly. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see Spectre, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you actually enjoy this one, or did it not live up to some of the other Bond movies for you? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.